Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Sana Akbar, student of BA Honors from Sargodha University. The topic assigned to me was to summarize 10 most recent research papers on method of teaching Islamic studies. The first research paper was an innovative method of teaching Islamic studies using PowerPoint. It is very rare to teach Islamic studies based on technology. Earlier, teaching through technology was thought inappropriate because it is a revealed and sacred message. Its teaching through technology like PowerPoint has proved very effective. This successful teaching method is applied at the Academy of Islamic Studies at the University of Malaysia. Students like this teaching method as it brings lively interaction and more information when main points of sacred knowledge are told in a different way. But it should be minded that its effectiveness depends on its proper use. Research paper 2 was using multimedia in teaching Islamic studies. To make learning process enjoyable and attractive, educators play an important role. To convert learning process into a very fascinating way, that students get motivated and education should be fun and thrill for them instead of burden and boredom. So multimedia has the ability to capture the attention of today's digital generation who are media-centric because it addresses variety of learning styles like audio, video, links, text, and graphics. Researchers have found that students' negative mindset toward a subject can be changed by the use of multimedia tools. Research paper 3 was teaching technique of Islamic studies in higher learning institutions for non-Arabic speakers. To teach non-Arabic speaking students, some techniques are suggested and applied to the lecturer of Islamic studies. For the fields of Quran memorization, suggested methods are Tikrar, Talaqi, Musyafa, and Tasmi. Reported methods for fields of Ibadah are discussion, cooperative learning, and brainstorming. The methods for the fields of Ikhlaq are discussion, brainstorming, and teaching with computer. The techniques to follow Islamic studies is question answer technique, role play technique, discussion technique, brainstorming. Before applying any method, it must commensurate with goals and objectives aspired to be achieved. In this way, students will learn better and faster. Research number 4 was teaching of Islamic studies. Teacher must clear some instructions on the very first day of the class. For example, 0 marks will be assigned if the file is problematic. Assignments not submitted within due date will not be accepted later. Plagiarized assignments will not be approved. If correct format is not followed, the marks will be deducted. Lessons should be planned according to time duration, subject, topics, subtopics, general objectives, student learning outcomes, instructional objectives, resources to be used, and smart of student learning. There must be some procedures to be followed during lecture delivery, like introduction. Teacher must do salam and ask students about their health. Teacher ensures student participation. Formative checking, summarizing at the end of the lesson. Research paper number 5 was assessment of teaching learning methodology in Islamic studies. During last century, a very controversial issue about the method of teaching Islamic studies arises. In late 1970s, scientists discussed this failure and made actions to deal with the weakness. A conference was held in Mecca in 1970 to identify main problems and give their solutions. Islamic education is based on the holistic view where knowledge is produced by the revelation and human experience, but through various human faculties like mind, heart, and soul, the knowledge could be transformed. The continuity and the changes in Islamic education have gone through 5 periods. First, the period of revelation that promises for Islamic education. Second is the period of medieval Islamic period. Third was colonial period, in which historical period of Islamic education. Next phase is post-colonial era, which was the next phase of Islamic education. Fifth period is known as period of Islamization, which proceeds further Islamic education. Research paper 6 was teaching Islamic studies at the International Islamic University in Malaysia. In order to foster teaching excellence, the university offers practical classes for the new faculty, including the use of technology. Within the Department of Usul ad-Din, Religious studies links the study of essential of Islam along with the study of religions of non-Muslims. Exams are conducted both to test students' knowledge about the basics of other religions and also to reaffirm the truths of Islam. Students are advised not to pass comments on other religions and follow the path of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and prefer when it comes to the treating non-Muslims and the religion of non-Muslims. Some common assignments which faculty used to give to students is to visit a famous Hindu pilgrimage or a village located near the campus. Due to the reason that students don't have complete understanding, finally, the IUM participate in the educational goals of students like modern universities. They participated in students' ability to communicate, think, problem solving, and develop lifelong learning habits. The university aims at preparing students in such a way that they succeed in the workplace with the faith, resources, and necessary practical issues. Research paper number 7 was study of Islamic methods in Saudi Arabia. There are many ways for the Islamic education used in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to teach high school religion students. Some of these approaches include preaching, therapy, commandment, reflective teaching, also known as tikrar, narrative system of discourse, metaphor teaching, and dictation process teaching. The methods followed by the Prophet in every bit of Islamic history were education by preaching, guidance, and commandment. It is clear that the many periods of early Islamic periods used by scholars and academics were quite innovative and even modern for the time, as they are still being used by 21st century teachers to teach religion. Next comes teaching methods, principles, advantages, and disadvantages. Teaching method. To enable students learning the principles and methods used by teachers is known as teaching method. The management, strategies, principles, and pedagogy used for classroom instruction is called as teaching method. The choice for teaching method depends on what fits on a teacher. It's the educational approach, school mission statements, class demographic, and subject areas. Principles of teaching methods: encourage contact between students and faculty, develop cooperation and reciprocity among students, encourage active learning, give prompt feedback, emphasize time on task, respect diverse talents and way of learning, communicate high expectations. Advantages and disadvantages of teaching methods. Lecture method. Its advantage is that lecture method is a cheap way of conveying a topic to a large audience and it is very efficient. Disadvantage: in this method, students play passive role and teacher play active role, as it is one-way speaker communication with no student participation. It is difficult to maintain learners' interest and it does not appear to be an effective teaching method. Next comes the internet-based teaching. It is accessible, its content can be generated regularly, and it is very convenient. Its disadvantage is that it needs computing skills. Portfolio building method. It is student-centered. The learner's reflection of knowledge, attitudes, and beliefs. It encourages great learner responsibility and it fosters self-assessment skills. Disadvantages: it is work-intensive. Tutorial teaching method. It promotes adult learning, encourages them to solve problems, incorporate the conceptual knowledge. It promotes social and intellectual experience and develop oral presentation skills. It affects the development of attitudes and values. Its disadvantage is that it is labor intensive. Thank you so much. Hope you guys understand.